It's okay that I have emotions because mama has them. A lot of times we do things unknowingly trying to show up as superwoman, supermom, Wonder Woman, for everybody. And everybody thinks we are okay. And sometimes, baby girl, we are not okay. And I'm talking about, no, I'm not okay with 3 W's. But we show up and we say we okay. It's like, I'm okay. No, ma'am. It is okay to say that you are not okay. Because that's how them conversations go. Listen, some of them conversations with them kids will send you left and you be like, all right, girl, give me a minute. I got to digest this. Because what you just said, like, I'm not okay at this moment. Like, I'm right.
Hi guys, and welcome to another episode on the Mom Panel on BTW's podcast. I am so excited for today's topic, actually. It's called Building Trust and Communication with Preteens and Why Openness Matters. So today we're going to have the 4 ladies talking about, our lives and how maybe personally we went through a preteen stage and how we can relate right now with our children. So some of the questions in this episode will be, what practical steps can parents take to create a safe environment where preteens feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and feelings? What can be some of the best ways to de-escalate situations and get to the root of their feelings? All this and more on this episode of the Mom Panel on BTW's podcast. I don't know about you ladies, but nobody ever told me what to expect in prepubescent and preteen age when my child hit it and it just it was like a bomb. And then I didn't know what to expect, and being a new mom, I had all of these fears that my child was gonna be another second version of me. And if anybody knows my childhood past and my teenage past, that's a scary idea. And then, sometimes we displace these feelings onto them and we're like, but we have to remember they are their own person and they are not going to be like us if we guide them in a way that we wished we were also guided in. So today, I'd love to discuss some ways in which we could give our audience, you guys, some pointers in a way that is relatable with our culture, me being a Latina, or subcultures, such as the African American culture in the United States. We'll talk about the United States primarily because we are Americans, but we understand that worldwide there's cultures such as the Asian culture and, even down under in Australia. Some of these things that we discuss today will mainly be about the American culture, and within the United States, all the cultures that make up what is the United States of America. But, hopefully some of this resonates with you if you're not from the US. So let's start out this discussion with how can parents balance giving advice without sounding judgmental or dismissive? The reason I want to start with that question is because I think that sometimes when we don't go down the right path with teens and when it gets ugly, it's kind of around this area. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I totally agree. Especially when they begin to come into themselves. I know culturally, a Southern thing, a lot of older people say when they start smelling themselves. So when they get to that point in their life,
wait, hold on, Tiesha. What for the people that don't understand what you just said?
They start smelling themselves. So when they start smelling themselves, that just really mean that they've hit puberty. You really can't tell them nothing. They think they grown. That's what that means. In a southern lingo, they smelling themselves. So
Well, I want to tell a story about the smelling yourself later. So continue, Taisha, because I have one that's great.
yes. So when they hit that age, it's like they're trying to figure out who they are. And they're trying to come into themselves. Sometimes they buck the system, bucking as in being rebellious. And rebellious does not always look like jumping out of the window, stealing cars, that whole thing. It can literally be not doing something that you ask them to do when you ask them, or not doing it to the level that you know that they are capable of doing. So it's around that time where you have to check them a little bit, right? And you check them with love by having those conversations. Now the crazy thing about it is the conversations does not just start then. It's something that starts early on in life, from the very beginning. So the one of the best things to do is to educate ourselves, because we can't always use our experience for them because their experience is not our experience. And me personally, when I hit that age at 13, I was pregnant. So that's definitely totally different than what my child experienced. So instead of enforcing that fear, instilling that fear into her, I kind of just had to rely on education, because my parents and things of that nature, it wasn't too much of the birds and bees conversation. It wasn't too much of conversations about boundaries and this is that and the third. It was more so because I said so, and
Right.
don't do X, Y, and Z. But as kids, we're inquisitive. We want to know why, and it's not always
Yeah.
from a negative standpoint. But we start smelling ourselves, so they ain't gonna tell us why.
No, and same here in the culture, in the Latino culture as well. We were taught to respect our elders, and
Yes.
we're not really, we don't have the permission to say certain things and speak up on certain matters that unfortunately, actually we should be considered as children, but we aren't. And,
Right.
so today we'll definitely talk more upon that. How about you, Michelle? I know your culture is not Latino. It is or it's not? What do you guys in Brazil think about yourselves
Well,
and compared to Latinos?
it's very confusing. We are a confused race. I will tell you that because we don't speak Spanish, so we're not Hispanics. But if you look at Latin, where the majority of the like the Italian, the
Yeah.
French, the Portuguese, the Spanish, that all came from Latin culture, right? So that is how you can say Latinos, but are we? I don't know because who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. So, but anyway, the confused people of Brazil, we just, the culture is the same. Like you respect your elders, it's like, at least when I grew up there, it was, the dad was the responsible one and the mom like that
Gender
kind of a
role
family
specific.
trait. Yes, very much so. And, so, but I I want to go back to the smell in yourself because this is a great this so I have a 10-year-old and he's my complex kid, right? That's what I call him, my complex kid. He's got the genetic disorder. I think we talked about that already. But he's 10 and about I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, I was like, what is going on? Where's that smell coming from? I lift up his armpit and I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on down here? I don't understand. So I I'm like, okay, here we go. Puberty's starting, but I don't know how to have this conversation with him. So now,
Especially
ever
because
since
he's
then, I
also a boy, right? Like, I
correct.
feel,
And so he's not quite to the puberty stage. Like,
yeah.
he hasn't found himself yet, but he's smelling himself. And so I was like, we need to go get some deodorant. So I called my
Because
mama
mama's
friend.
smelling you too.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, where's the shout that I have to spray on the arms in the before it goes into the laundry? So anyway, I am like, what do I do now? So I call my mama friends and I go, okay, the smells have started. What do we do? So anyway, we ordered a deodorant and that came, and then trying to get him to wear deodorant and remember to put it on after he takes baths. Good luck with that,
Yeah.
right? So I put it
Yes.
on the kitchen table right by where he eats so he can remember to put it on in the morning before he goes to school. But
Aw.
the interesting thing is that so this is happening with my son who's 10, and then I have my
Right.
8-year-old daughter who, like, she's ready to be 16. Like, she is ready. Today's her birthday. She just turned 8, and she's like, when can I drive? When can I have 5 boyfriends? When can I do this on
Right.
my own? And so, and then my boy, who's smelly, he's like, doop, doo, doo, don't know anything about anything. And so I am actually in the process of going through this. Like, how do you make, how do you make them aware? So I started buying all these books about talking about their bodies and talking about, like what's happening with their bodies. And I will tell you that so I bought 4 books and I have not read any of them to them because there are certain things in the books that really kind of bothers me. And there's
Yeah,
other
tell us
things that I'm
something
like,
about it. Like,
Yeah, I'm
what
curious
is
what.
something? Yeah.
yes. So, I mean, so I think that for an 8 and a 10-year-old, especially with special needs, right?
Yeah.
Even though he's 10 and he has the smelly stuff going on, his mind is not necessarily at a 10 or 11 or a 12-year-old yet. So he's really kind of
Right.
behind. He's probably more like in a 7-year-old level. So when I looked at the books, it talks a lot about, like, it starts talking about sex. It talks about how everything, and I'm like, I don't think it's quite the time to have this kind of conversation with them. But once you bring a book out to them, how can you say, don't look at these pages? You can't. So it's been a hard decision on what to teach them at this age.
Yeah.
We are very open in the house. Like, and by that I mean we we don't walk around naked in my house. But like I shower, my husband showers, and it's kind of, like probably TMI right here, and my husband's going to be super mad at me for putting this out there in the world. But,
Yeah.
like the kids come in, and so we're okay with our bodies. They understand that there's a girl and there's a boy and that kind of stuff. But like I have not had the strength and I can say balls to actually have this conversation yet.
Yeah.
So it's been hard. I never had
Yeah.
it. My mom, oh my gosh, my mom would never, I grew up Mormon in Brazil. Like,
Yeah.
sex was for procreation, is that kind of stuff. And so it's like, what, like, how
Yeah.
do I teach my kids now? Anyway, so I am struggling with finding a good book. So when I find one, I will give it to you guys. If Tiesha has any idea, like if you
I
guys
was gonna
have gone through
say, I'm
this,
curious
I would
what
love
Taisha thinks.
to have to find one. So
Right. So what I would
but yeah.
say is, as far as books, being that YouTube and TikTok and all this stuff is a thing, I would suggest like try to find something that's kid friendly when it comes to that. So you don't directly have to just have that conversation if you're not like really ready to have that conversation. But with the video playing, then when questions come, you can answer them according to their level versus getting out a book and be like, all right, so this is where we are in life and this is what's happening with your body. And you're feeling iffy and anxious and nervous about it. They're going to feel anxious and
even
nervous
more
about it. Right. And it's
Yes.
because, and the thing is, it's natural, but society has made it where it's so, oh my God. And that's how we feel about it. And when they know, especially at those, at that age, we don't want, and that's another thing that education prevents different things from happening to them. Example, molestation, those things, because they know, like, okay, this isn't right. This is what this is. So now I know. And for myself personally, 1 + 1 didn't equals 2 then. We just playing house. Like, we're not having sex per se, but my body is feeling some type of way because our bodies are made to feel, and it's a natural thing. So when they're able to comprehend and begin to have those little conversations, it's okay, in my opinion, to find videos that kind of resonates with it so they can kind of get a understanding on their level. Each level is a different type of conversation. It's like you're just adding to it. I'm not saying come out the gate at 8 years old talking about sex. No. But having them understand their body, because eventually she's going to start her menstrual cycle. I was like 9, and all I knew was I freaked out.
So was I, girl. So was I.
Yes. So the conversation wasn't had before, it was had then, and it was like, all right, this is a panty line, this is a pad, this is what you do. And after that, it was, now you can have a baby. Wait, huh? I can.
Right.
That's what. So it's just like education starts early, and it's uncomfortable because it's our babies, and we want them to be babies forever. But newsflash, they grow before your eyes, and before you know it, they are completing college, completing their first semester in college. So it's just like we have to have those uncomfortable conversations, but let's not make them uncomfortable. Miss Gia, play therapy. That could be dope. Like, you can have the little, because it's like, okay, this is the boy, this is the girl, this is the body part, this is what it is, this is what it's not. And, be comfortable. This is what happens when your body begins to grow. When you get older, you get boobs. And boobs are this. And this is what this is called. So helping them being able to understand their body and what's going to happen. Because the urges come. They, and it's just like, what's going on with my body? Yeah. I can't tell, oh my God, I'm shamed because sex is so taboo, or, the body parts are a scary thing. No, like, have the small conversations. That way, when they begin to feel some type of way, that communication is already open. And now I can go to mom, I can go to dad and be like, listen, something's weird is happening. And mama can be like, oh, you're coming into puberty. This is what it's like when you're, so
I love it.
I wanted to actually piggyback on that, because in my experience as a child, actually, I learned about sex from a friend. And I was like 8. That was really traumatic, guys. Yeah. Like, it was not the best experience at all.
And I imagine now, with things being so accessible, stuff like that is happening with even more frequency, whether it's from a peer or just like the nature of I'm on YouTube and wait a minute, like, what's this? I mean, I feel like that stuff must be happening even more now in this day and age with just how much information our kids are able to get their hands on. So I feel like this idea of being proactive in the conversation as a parent rather than reactive. Now I'm trying to like undo whatever information like you're hearing outside of this, or something is happening and now I'm trying to like catch you up. That makes so much sense to me.
And I want to ask you, Jill, in your setting, I'm not sure. Sorry, Michelle.
No, I was going to say my mom tried to catch up when I was going to get married at 36 years old. And I'm like, Mom, I don't need this conversation right now. You know what I mean? Like, I needed that about 30 years ago.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I've been living with my boyfriend for 5 years. Like, thanks a lot, you know? So, yeah, like, I mean, don't wait until they're 36 years old to have the conversation is all I'm saying.
That is so funny. No, I was going to ask Jill, I don't know if your line of work, I know specifically in mine when I was a substitute preschool teacher, you know, that preschool age, actually, there was a lot of masturbation. I know for a lot of people, there's a lot of jaws on the floor, but it's true.
Well, it's like a form of self-soothing in a lot of ways for a child of that age. Or can be.
And I would catch, you know, especially the little girls at nap time. And it was a thing that I, at the time, after I would say at this point, I was already a mom of 2 preteens, I would say. And it was the first time I had actually seen it so young. So I didn't know what to do, actually. I wanted to correct it, quote unquote, guys. It's not a correction. It's like Jill said. And I knew early childhood education taught me that it was absolutely normal, but I just had a reaction, you know, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is wrong. It's wrong. I'm Latina. Again, I'm Latina, so this is wrong and they shouldn't be doing this. And I caught myself and I was like, you know what? How can we use this moment to talk about what is happening right now in their bodies? So it just, as Tiesha was saying, you know, it can start even earlier than prepubescent age. So why not introduce, you know, the conversation to them even earlier than that? And like Tiesha said, it doesn't have to be taboo. It can just be talking about certain things that they're going through. And in my own experience myself is that I had friends that would have, you know, they would explore their bodies. And that's how I became knowledgeable about my own body. And I was like maybe 11, maybe 10. So again, I guess the recurring thing that is happening right now is like, if mom and dad, if you're not doing it at home, they're going to learn anyways. So why not create a safe space for them? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I am going to tell you that as a child who did not have that, it was really hard because, and sometimes I still feel like, you know, because everything just kind of came to me all of the, like, in college, really, because when I was younger, I couldn't do anything because I grew up in that environment where, you know, you don't let these things happen to you. You like the boyfriends and things like that. And so it really actually, it was, I don't know if I necessarily got the correct information because it came from friends around me.
Exactly.
And then even talking about it was wrong. And so like, okay, so how am I supposed to learn this stuff? And we didn't have internet back then. We didn't have, you know, anything that I could go, like I could go to those humongous encyclopedias that my parents had at our house. But then if I got caught looking at that kind of stuff, I would get in so much trouble. So, I mean, you know, I, as an adult that didn't have that, I am telling you, it is an issue. And it is an issue having like relationships. I think that a lot of times I look back, I got married older. I was 36 years old. And so, I mean, like, what? Like,
yeah, no, it can be very, you know, very confusing.
Issues. Yeah.
No, I made up some questions that that can be useful for parents actually to resolve common communication problems. And these questions it's not one, one size fits all, but, do with them as you see fit. So one of them is, can you help me understand how you're feeling about this? Another one is, what do you think would be a good solution about this problem? So this encourages preteens to express their emotions in their own words without feeling judged. So questions are really good because at least right now you're letting them come out with what they are possibly bottling up, right? So you could use, is there something I've done that made you feel upset or misunderstood? Or how about, what's something you're really excited about or proud of right now, to kind of, and this one will probably opens the door for more self-reflection and trying to play a game of, well, not play a game, but kind of bounce off ideas where a child actually starts to open up because they feel like they're being heard and like mom is actually interested in what, something that excites me. So maybe you can use this as something in a situation where they were bullied at school, and maybe redirect them about something that they're proud of, and then go into matters that make them feel uncomfortable. Another one is, do you feel like I listen to you? If not, how can I do better? And then let's see, what's the hardest part of your day right now? I like that one. That one is kind of like, again, trying to open up some really hard dialogue. Let's see a few others. How can I make things easier or more fun for you? Or if you could change one thing about how we talk to each other, what would it be? So these are just some of the many ways that you can open up with your child. Do you guys have something around the ones that I just mentioned?
I do. I have a thought.
Sure.
Well, one of them is that you can be doing this my daughter's 4, and we have conversations and ask questions similar to the ones you mentioned. I think we can invite our children and parents in a more kind of collaborative way. That doesn't mean we don't set boundaries. That doesn't mean that our primary job is not to keep them healthy and safe, but does show them that we respect them as a person, which is what I think many of those questions do, right? It invites you in like, hey, what you feel matters. I want to be here for you and with you. How can I best support you, right? And I think we can be doing that right from the start. But I also had another thought as you were sharing, which is, I think questions can be really helpful, but sometimes depending on your child's personality and temperament or what the subject matter is, and I say this with younger kids, which is where my expertise, but I'm even thinking about how I felt as like a preteen and a teen, and feeling a lot of shame or fear of getting in trouble, like Michelle mentioned, around not just like sexual, things that we mentioned, but around a lot of different topics. And I think that sometimes what would have been really nice to hear is kind of like, I don't know, almost like a parent kind of like humanizing themselves and not coming from this place of like being the be all, know all, I'm the adult, you're the child, you know nothing, I know everything, but rather this thing of like, hey man, like I get it. I felt this way too, or sharing their own failure or their own. And I know it's tricky because it could border on that kind of like ick factor of like, mom, I don't want to hear about you doing whatever.
Right.
But I feel like there is something to sort of sharing, right, our experiences also, and having some more open dialogue, or even, may I say it, like admitting like, hey, I actually don't know. I don't know everything.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things I do know. I don't know. Let's kind of figure this out together, or let's find a resource that will know, right? I think there's something to that of taking ourselves as parents and making us people, people that maybe have been in the world longer, but that also don't know everything, that have also struggled, that have also been, you know, in situations like this from one time or another, and didn't always get it right. Like, I feel like I try to do this with my daughter around some smaller scale things than maybe the topics we're talking about today. But I do think there's something really important about, you know, not seeing your parent as this person who always has it together and always gets it right, because I think that creates some of the fear about messing up. And I feel like we have to create safe spaces of what, quote, messing up or like not getting it right is at these different stages. So where I am now, that might be, you know, I spilled something, I broke something, like, I don't know, the things that come up with my toddler. And then with our older children, the stakes are higher. Bigger kids, bigger problems. But I think the principle is the same. I don't know if anyone else feels the same or wants to weigh in, but
I agree. I agree. Opening up and not being the know-it-all. As you were talking, Jill, as the panel knows, I just recently lost my dad. And one of the interesting things that happened, and this is one of the first things that I think about when I'm talking to somebody and letting them know, hey, I just recently lost my dad. And my daughter, who's 8 years old today, we decided to tell them the day that it happened. And so I sat in bed and I looked at her and I looked at my son and I said, you know how Vovo was sick, so, you know, he passed away. And she looked at me with tears in her eyes, and she looked at me and she said, Mom, you don't have any parents anymore. And I started bawling, right? And so I know I'm taking this to a different place, but the most important thing to me was it was okay for me to cry when she said that, because it was okay for me to feel that when she said that. And so it was incredible to me that an 8-year-old would have that kind of a perspective, right? And that she could feel what I was feeling. And so sometimes, and I had to validate her feeling too, as I validated my own at that time. So when you're talking about not being the strong, the know-it-all, the parent that can hold everything together, which I would love for people to think that of me, because I can carry a lot on my shoulders. But it is okay to fall apart also, and letting your kids know that it is okay, that it doesn't have to be awful. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be like, it's okay to have feelings, basically.
Absolutely. Tiesha, did you want to say something?
Yeah, so two things before. So Michelle, you made the statement that people know that you can carry a lot on your shoulders, right? Just because you can carry, it doesn't mean that it's heavy and that you want to carry all the time. So in this moment, I give you permission to release a lot of the stuff that you're carrying. And that's personal, that's business, because Michelle shows up for everybody.
She really
in every
does,
aspect of her
though.
life. And when she shows up, and when she shows up giving her all. Sometimes she's actually almost on empty, if not on empty, when she shows up.
Yes, ma'am.
So Michelle, I just want to encourage you to take some time for you, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes a day, to just refill yourself. Just being, with you these last few weeks, it's just like there's so much, that you endure and have endured, but you're so strong. So allowing your child to see you cry in that moment is to say, yes, mama is human. Mama has emotions. So now in her mind, as she continued to grow, she may feel like, you know what? One of the strongest women I know cried. So I can cry too.
That's right.
It's okay if I cry. It's okay that I have emotions because mama has them. A lot of times we do things unknowingly trying to show up as superwoman, supermom, Wonder Woman, for everybody. And everybody thinks we are okay. And sometimes, baby girl, we are not okay. And I'm talking about, no, I'm not okay with 3 W's. But we show up and we say we okay. And it's like, I'm okay. No, ma'am. Yes. It is okay to say that you are not okay because that's how them conversations go. Listen, some of them conversations with them kids send you left and you be like, all right, girl, give me a minute. I got to digest this because what you just said, like, I'm not okay at this moment. Like, I'm going through, so give me a minute and let me process, which goes back to having that open relationship, that dialogue where they can feel safe to come to you. Even when they are crying, it's like, well, I can go to mom. I can go to her when I'm crying because she understands what it's like to feel, regardless if it's the breakup with the little boyfriend or your friends stop talking to you that they want to share on the playground, or your best friend start dating your guy friend. Like, anything, they know that it's okay. Like, I can go to mama, and I used to tell parents all the time because they would be like, you your child's mama, you ain't their friend. And I was like, you know what? I disagree. And I'm gonna tell you why I disagree. I disagree because, especially with the daughter, you are your child's first friend. You are the person to show your child how to be a friend, how to operate as a genuine good person, showing up for your friend, doing for your friend, listening, being there, and loving. But if I always tell my child, I'm the mom, you're a child, stay in a child's place, we ain't gonna talk. We ain't gonna have no conversation because at this point, like, I can't talk to you because you're my superior. Right. Yes, we're superior when it comes to parenting and things of that nature, but we still have to make that space safe so they can feel like I can go and talk to mom. That's what boundaries come in. And the boundaries, we don't utilize them. We just put up a whole wall. Like, wait a minute, now I'm trying to see. Like, let me talk to you. But I can't talk to you if there's a wall. And we wonder why our kids go out and do X, Y, and Z or run to everybody else. It's because we have not shown them that, hey, I am available. This is my first time being mom. This is your first time being child. We're both trying to figure this thing out together. I'm going to give you grace, you give me grace, and together we'll figure it out some way or another.
Yeah,
that's right. Figure it out. I hear you. I actually, it took me back to when I was mothering my daughter. And, I don't know if this will help any of our audience or maybe Jill or maybe you, Michelle, but I grew up with very strict parents. And one thing I did promise myself, I was going to be more open. But how can you balance being a friend and also being a mom? So for those of you that are like me and have a conflict with this because you were also brought up in a very strict household, I want to say that what helped me actually was to be a mom in those first 5-6 years. And, if you wanted to be more strict, obviously nurturing, but more strict in those years, I think that that's totally valid. But I told myself I was going to let go a little bit by prepubescent age because I did all the foundation in the first 6 years. Right, Tiesha? You agree with that? Yeah. So, because, in the first 6 years, I thought, okay, time out, you go to your room, or however you want to, do your consequences. But prepubescent, you're now dealing with hormones and a lot of things going on and, that are going to be tricky, and your child is going through it just the same as you. So you have to loosen up a little bit. And so I did all the teaching in the first years and then more of the guiding in the later years, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
So can I just really quickly?
Yeah, go
That
ahead.
is so true. That foundational point It's teaching them like the values, being kind, being nice, consequences. This is what happened when this happens. And like I stated earlier, it's just a build on. So when they get to a certain age, we're just going to say 12, 13, they are really trying to figure out what is going on with them because they are changing. And in that change, we still have to be patient with them, but we also have to let them know, like, listen, I am still mom. I hear you. I see you, but you're going to respect me because I'm going to respect you. And that respect, we don't teach respect when they're 12. You teach respect when they're little, so they'll 100%. Understand the concept, right? And it begins to look different as they get older, but it's that instilling in them. It's just like a house. That foundation is laid, then the rest of it is, it goes up. We can't put the roof on without the foundation being laid. So definitely getting that foundational stuff done in the beginning. Yes. Not always laughing when they do something wrong. Because who's going to correct them when they get big? It's too late now. You done laughed at me my whole life.
It's too late now.
Yeah, you didn't correct me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I don't even want to say it's too late. You can still do the work, but it's going to be a little bit harder.
Yeah, changes.
And and you might find yourself that having to bend more at the later age than not, and then it's confusing for
trying to overcompensate for what you didn't do.
Yeah, you overcompensate. And it's just
like because of power struggle.
I think it's true with like shame too. Like so much of this conversation we're having, I feel like at its root is talking about this idea of feeling shame around things that shouldn't be shameful, and how can we kind of counteract that and create more open communication around these different things. And I think there's so much in the earliest years around that we don't mean to do, but that ultimately creates this circuitry in a child's brain that causes shame, that causes fear. It's like a time that, when we're starting to lay the foundation for a child, where they see that I did this thing and this is how my parent responded to me, right? And if not a parent, other adults in the life. This is what, teachers, the way our teachers approach children, finding, educational environments that, are in line with your family values. This is why this is so important, because it's all of the adults in your child's life. But the reality is, and I think we can all attest to it as adults now, that the way the adults in your life speak to you, the way that they, model communication for you, the way they react in different circumstances, and what you then go to believe is true about different things. Oh, I can't make a mistake because this is how the grown-ups in my life are reacting when I make a mistake, right? This is where that starts. So I say that not to make people feel terrible or guilty, but rather to empower you. Because if you do have a young child at home, you get to be the parent that you want to be. You get to show up and respond the way you want to. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of self-regulation. But I think when we recognize what an immense responsibility we have, and how that really does shape a child's self-confidence, shape their beliefs about, what's okay and not okay, we can create that safety for them. And that doesn't mean not having boundaries. It's just about how are we sending these messages, right? How are we having these conversations? A lot of the families I work with are, really all of the families I work with are kids under 7 and really more under 5. And often we feel like, especially in the early toddler years, like, oh, well, you can't do any of that yet. And I'm like, no, like that's where that starts. It's like that's where it all begins. And if what we're modeling is like, don't mess up, you're in big trouble when you mess up, you get, this is the, quote, punishment for this crime. That now is creating circuitry in these kids where then that becomes the voice that they have for themselves. Oh, I can't tell my mom because that's the reaction I get. We have to recognize like where that responsibility is for us, and that we can also shift it. We can create those lines of communication where our kids then feel safe. And I feel like that's so, so, so important.
Yeah.
Yes. Did you? No, I actually wanted to talk about all the don'ts, if you guys don't mind. Does anyone else have anything to say before I go into the don'ts? No? All good? Okay. So speaking of creating a safe space, and not to put you guys on the spot here, but, I don't want to in any way, again, this is not a one size fits all situation, but we're not perfect as parents. So I made up some don'ts along the way that you might, find helpful with connecting when it comes to connecting with your child. So don't dismiss their feelings. So avoid phrases like "you're overreacting." It's not a big deal. This invalidates their emotions. It might make them feel unheard or reluctant to share in the future. So don't lecture or preach. Now, this is easier said than done, right? Because that's what we want to do. That's what we've been doing since they were born. But long-winded monologues often lead to zoning out. And so avoid starting with, "when I was your age." You can do some of that. But when it comes to certain topics, probably sway away from it. Unless, it directly relates to their situation. So then go for it. Instead, keep conversations concise and relevant. So number 3, don't overreact. That kind of goes in the same way as, "oh, it's not a big deal. I did some of that. It was horrible. And the consequences were dire, unfortunately, in my case." Don't dismiss their privacy. So, Latinos, here we go again with this. We don't get privacy in our homes a lot of the time. And that kind of unfortunately went against our culture. You don't get privacy in the Latino. Sometimes we have 2 or 3 in a room. So it just is what it is. But try not to snoop in their belongings and digital devices without a valid reason, guys. Respect their space. It fosters trust. Unless you're really, really concerned about their safety. Okay. Then honestly intervene. And have my full permission for that if you need it. Don't compare them to others. I was very compared to a lot of people as a child, and it took a toll on my self-esteem. So, why can't you be more like a sibling or a friend or a cousin? Oh, that was horrible. Don't use sarcasm too. Like, "well, that was a smart move, right?" Like, or, some undertone in your voice. It may seem harmless at first, but it can actually hurt or confuse the preteens and think you're actually not taking them seriously or maybe are being dismissive. Don't pry when they aren't ready to talk, kind of around where Jill was talking about, being a little shy. So just, don't constantly say, "what's wrong? Why don't you tell me?" It can feel a little intrusive for the personality that doesn't quite feel ready to share. Don't undermine. I know it's 2 more to go. Don't undermine their growing independence. Saying things like, "you can't handle that," or micromanaging tasks. And then let's say I said 2 more, but I lied. It's 2 more now. Don't make everything about consequences, kind of along the lines of what we were talking earlier. So avoid turning every conversation into a threat or punishment. Like, "if you don't do this, you'll lose your privilege." So thank you for touching upon that, Jill. And then don't assume they're too young to understand. Kind of same thing, avoid dismissing tough topics like mental health, body safety, world events, assuming that they won't grasp the seriousness. But you are the parent after all, so you can gauge that at your own, judgment. And then preteens are often more aware than we think, guys. And we should appreciate them being honest. Yeah. Being spoken to honestly at their level, I guess. They appreciate us speaking to them as if they were adults, actually. So, and let's see. Do you guys have any things you want to talk about with what I just said? Nothing?
Can I show you something?
Go
ahead.
Everyone
Sure, please. Everyone.
Right, at
1, 2, 3.
And open-end questions are definitely amazing. Keep the questions open-ended so you can actually get information. Yes. And ask them, instead of just, when they bring us a situation instead of just giving a solution, you can ask, okay, so are you telling me this to vent, or do you want my opinion, or do you want a solution? Because sometimes they really just want to vent. So.
Right. Anyone else?
I just wanted to show you something that,
sure.
I mean, maybe you could link in the show notes or not, but that I'm
sure.
obsessed with. And I have it here on the table. So these are conversation cards.
Ooh, I love.
Conversation cards, but they're specifically for families. We will do this, like my daughter is 4, but we will do this at dinner, but they're great for well through the elementary school years into the teen years, and your child can kind of meet the answer at an age appropriate level. A lot of families that I work with that are trying to detox from screen time, this is something that I suggest because it's a great way
I love that.
to kind of like just improve upon communication and to kind of get you started. But the cards are they're in 4 different categories. So there's different types of topics. Some of them are a little more fun and silly. Some of them are a little more, serious and emotional in nature. But it's things like, yes. What would you do for fun if you had to give up electricity? Or what does it mean to be successful? Or if we could travel anywhere in the world, where would you want to go? There's all different types of things in here, but I have found it so fascinating hearing my daughter's answers and things that, to your point, guys, from earlier, that I might think were over her head, or I'm oh, she's not, this one maybe is not age appropriate. The way she interprets it and is able to respond has been just so cool. And it also has even been great, for my husband and me, it's just a really great way to connect. And it's so easy. And there's hundreds and hundreds, of different opportunities to spark conversation. But I feel like it's very in line with what we are talking about today. And I happen to have it right in front of me because we've been using it at dinner. But I wanted to share that in case anyone was kind of looking for an opening, right? I feel like we can start with just opening up conversations about all different things. And when that trust and communication are there, it makes it a lot easier to talk about some of the tricky stuff.
Yes.
I love
I love that. I need to get those cards. We just
I'll send
started
you guys the link.
Yeah, we just started doing some games, I remember, even though I had the childhood that I had, we did have what they called family home evening. And it's basically, there was always a spiritual part, the Mormon spirituality stuff that would happen. And then we had games and things like that. And so I do remember that. And so I think that that's kind of how I connected with my brothers and sisters in a way. My mom and dad were not very consistent with this at all, but I feel like that is something that we have implemented at our house. Even when we go to Disneyland, which we do quite often because we live so close, we actually take charades and we do with the phone, things like that. And so, and things that I thought that my daughter and my son, they wouldn't know, they know. And it's awesome. It's very, very cool. And it's been fun because that opens up the conversation also, not necessarily with the questions, but the relationship. So that is just something, game night or just those type of things too, just to develop that, relationship that you would have with your children. So
I love that. So to end today's episode, I wanted to actually go through a last list. I know. But it's for everyone's, we're in a solution-based platform, guys, where this is what we're doing for today. So let's say, all right, you didn't actually do all the things we just spoke about today, and you had a hard time putting the foundation in, and you didn't take a lot of precaution before 6 years old by putting boundaries, and now you have this kind of wild-ish going on to crazy, scary teen, and you're afraid that maybe you did a lot of the don'ts. That was my situation a lot of the time, so I thought about you guys too, okay? And it's not easy, so please, no judgment. I don't know, like, if you feel judged at this moment, or if you feel shame that, you know, you just didn't do it right, there is no such a thing. I want to tell you that there are solutions with trying to at least put the first foot forward and creating that dialogue with your preteen or your teen. So, first of all, acknowledge that you're wrong, right? Acknowledge your mistakes. Like, it takes a big person to acknowledge that you're not perfect. So admit when you're overreacting. Admit it when you dismiss their feelings. Admit it to them. It actually makes such a difference, guys. And you're also teaching them a very valuable lesson of being able to, again, be human, right? Maybe you violated their trust. So something like, you can say something like, I realize I didn't handle that the best way. I'm sorry for dismissing how you felt earlier. Just as simple as that, right?
Yeah.
And then careful with the tone, because that really helps, right? Just really tell them with your tone how much you love them, even if you don't do it necessarily with your words. Let's see. Apologize. I already said that. Validate their feelings. How about say something like, I realize now that you are really upset and I should have listened more. And or more carefully, or something like, your feelings matter to me. How about also number 3, rebuild trust through action. So, you know, monkey see, monkey do. I don't want to say it that way, but monkey see, monkey do. Right. So basically, if you violated their privacy or trust, or, you know, anything that way, set boundaries to prevent it from happening again. And an example would be like, I won't go through your things again without talking to you first. I just want us to be able to trust each other. So just kind of, you know, things like that to rebuild trust are crucial. And by the way, your children want to listen, guys. I know that it doesn't feel like it sometimes, but they do look up to you. You are their first love after all, mom and dad. So, you know, they want to trust you. It's not that they don't. So maybe there are things that we need to repair, right? Reframe future conversations. Examples are, instead of lecturing, ask questions like, how can we work on this together? In Latin culture, we don't really do this all the time. So, you know, we take that seniority, bring it down and just work on it on the same level with your preteen, and they will appreciate it. All right, couple more. Let's see. Encourage open communication, such as saying stuff like, I know I didn't handle that well before, but I want you to feel like you can always talk to me. So again, it's kind of like in the same token of like being apologetic, but really here what you're doing is telling them that they can come to you. Anything else you guys want to like think that we should include in this list? I have like 5 more, but anything else? Let's see.
I think those are great. Like those are
great.
Oh yeah, they are definitely on point. Some of the ones I would definitely say and have used, honestly, and I've seen the fruit of that take place. That seed that was sown of saying, "Hey, I'm wrong, my bad. You know, I don't know everything. You know, I see you were really upset about that situation. I didn't handle it well. I overreacted. So right. Now at 19, she's actually able to have healthy conversations. And when she gets snappy, she'll be like, you know what, Mom, I'm sorry. I overreacted. And it's because of monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah.
You know, she was able to understand the value of it. It's going to look like they don't understand it, you know, but I promise you, just keep at it. And it'll pay off.
it does pay off. I'm the first one to tell you guys, be consistent. Like, literally be consistent. If you promise something, follow through with it. Practice active listening, stuff like that. And probably the last one I'll say is the same thing that we were talking with Jill, reconnect through shared activities. And that is amazing what you just presented, Jill. That I love that idea, and I love that Michelle can actually adopt that one in her own life. Well, I guess that's it for today's show. Thanks so much for being here today with us. We will see you on the next Mom Panel. Until then,
bye.
Bye.